On 531 VI.
It is 11 minutes past 8 o'clock for Friday, the 8th of August. William Teresi in the chair with you through until 9 a.m. It's great to be in your company. It's Friday, that means we've got a weekly panel powwow. We round out the biggest stories of the week, of course, and unpack what they mean for our Pacific communities. This morning we've got a proud cookie panel. I don't know how the bosses allowed me to get away with this. Joining me is former National Party candidate Angee Nicholas and AUT Journalism Senior Lecturer Richard Pamatatau. Two sharp minds, both deeply connected to the issues we're about to talk about. On the agenda today, the latest unemployment stats paint a grim picture. And of course, the Cook Islands, New Zealand stoush that's going on. Oh, where? Plenty to chew on. They join me now. Kia ora to you both. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning.
Good on, William.
Look, I'll start with you, Angee. What do you make, politically speaking, of Prime Minister Christopher Luxon electing to head to Papua New Guinea instead of going to the Cook Islands celebrations?
Well, good morning. I think, well, there's always going to be two sides to it, isn't it? There's going to be those who continue to wonder about the relationship between the Cook Islands government and also New Zealand. And then you have those who probably sit on the other side who maybe expect this to happen, given obviously what's happened recently with Cook Islands and New Zealand. And so, I mean, I'd be in two minds. You know, we can only we're not privy to any of the conversations that happen, but what we do know is there something needs to be done. Talks need to happen, and whether or not that has happened or not, from what we can see, probably not.
Richard, was it a snub by Luxon?
Well, you could say it's a snub. Certainly, it makes Mr. Luxon appear to be particularly petulant around the relationship between Aotearoa, New Zealand, and the Cook Islands. But as Angee says, we don't know what the back conversations have been like. But in a broader sense, one could argue that the approach taken by New Zealand with successive governments, so this is not just the current coalition, but successive governments, you could argue that the approach towards the Cook Islands is particularly locked into a colonial framework. And when the colonized body doesn't do what is expected, then people get very, very upset. And we've seen that with the Foreign Minister, Mr. Peters. But again, these things are really complicated. Perhaps the Cook Islands Prime Minister was thinking, not enough is being done, what we offer is not being recognised, and China has reached out, and as a political leader, I need to make a decision about what's best for my population. So it is, as Angee said, complicated, and we don't know what goes on in the background.
Just sticking with you, Richard, drilling into your expertise, we've heard, that this is a miscommunication, a misunderstanding. Luxon just a few days ago characterised it as a dispute. Is this a comms nightmare?
Well, it certainly appears to be a communications nightmare, and it does again have there is a narrative of the bigger person being a little bit upset. But yes, it is a communications nightmare, and both parties need to sit down and talk it out, and also be very comfortable with the discomfort around this.
Angee, are you disappointed in the way in which National has been handling the situation? I mean, I think for the first time this week, Luxon openly said, I hadn't heard this language before, that this was a direct dispute with the Cook Islands government.
Yeah, and I think just picking up on that last point that you just said is that there, and I've said this before online as well, is that the issue is with the governments. And so the Cook Island people, like I said before, mostly sit in two camps. There's been huge disappointment from Cook Islanders themselves living here and also abroad in the Cooks, who are disappointed at their own Prime Minister. I think that's no secret. But also, I think it's just really difficult. And I think, having to head over to the Cooks for a celebration with these disputes, as you've referred to it, that are still ongoing, I think would be quite difficult. And so, in terms of handling it, we do need to figure out where to from here, and hopefully that does those talks do occur.
Yeah, and final question, perhaps I'll leave this with you, Richard. I mean, what's the path forward? I mean, I've recognised you say that, we need to, sit down and have these talks, but with your communications or journalism hat on, how would you deal with this, say, if you were the press secretary for Mark Brown?
Well, if I was the press secretary for Mark Brown, I'd say be very careful about what you say, because you don't want to inflame the situation. You have Cook Islanders in New Zealand who are not happy. You have Cook Islanders in your nation who are not happy. A case of kind of like, think before you open your mouth.
Yeah. Look,
that's a really blunt assessment, but this is a blunt issue that needs to be fixed.
Indeed. Speaking of an issue that needs to be fixed, let's shift quickly just to Pacific unemployment figures. Very sobering. Pacific peoples, more than double the national average now. Angee, is national failing?
Well, it's really quite early, isn't it? They've only been in office for a couple of years, and I think we have to realise it's not just national, it's a government, it's a coalition. But progress is being made. It is tough. I think the starting point is it's tough to hear those figures and how Pacific are being affected by it. Is there more to be done? The short answer is yes.
Richard, your take on it? National failing?
Well, actually, not just national. It's successive governments have failed the Pacific population. And at the moment, national is not covering itself with glory in any way whatsoever, because the unemployment numbers are rising. And we thought we would be back on track, and that's what people voted for, and that hasn't happened. But in a broader sense, governments successively over the last 10, 15, 20 years have not recognised the need to engage with the Pacific population and work with it on upskilling, on education, on health, on housing, etc., etc. And it has been going on for a long time, so we can't just sheet all the blame to the current government. This is a long-held problem.
Back to you, Angee. Just, it always begs the question inevitably, what specific interventions would actually move the needle for Pacific employment? I know there's no silver bullet, there's no one answer to this, but I'm going to be cheeky and ask, what's the solution you think?
Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna hold myself out to be an expert in the area, but I think if we were to sort of assess what the current government is doing and their action or plan to sort of tackle this, and there's a huge focus on the economy, right? And so we like you said, there's several things that we could focus on, but I guess in terms of improving that, people need better paying jobs and people need jobs. I think if I were to look at a policy from the government, there is a real focus on youth, but also for those who can work, should work, right? And so that's just one solution. But of course, there are many levers to addressing this really big problem that Richard has referred to.
Richard, just final comment on that particular subject. This government, as rightly pointed out, it's not just National in power, has been hell-bent on, the messaging around, economic growth. From a comms perspective, are they meeting that economic growth?
Well, look, you can talk about economic growth till you can just talk it and talk it and talk it, but actually when you look at the numbers, it's not happening. And that just says we need to get back to some basics. It is about education. It is about better health. It is about housing. And these are things that you can't blame it on the current government. It's 20 years of not thinking this stuff through. And if we just expand that a little bit, it's not just the Pacific population that's in trouble here. It's poor European Anglo families. It's people who don't have the skills to get a job. And actually currently, because of the cutbacks across a whole range of areas, it's people who had once good jobs now actually not able to even get an interview for a job. So it's complicated. There's lots of cross-cutting issues, and it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of really hard conversation to get things improved. And it won't happen within this term of government or the next government. It's a long-term burn that we need to look at.
Final subject that I just want to quickly hit with you both before we wrap up. You first, Richard. You work in higher education. NCEA touted it to be scrapped. Do you think this reform will actually leave Pacific students behind? Does it set them up well for higher education?
Look, we haven't seen the detail, and let's remember this is not going to come into force until 2030, so there's plenty of time to get it right. Let's also remember that NCEA was a National Party policy many, many years ago and then implemented by Labour. I think, well, I would argue the consultation process is too short. 6 weeks is not enough time to get round various population groups, but let's hope that it works. I mean, I am of the school CUE bursary generation, so I have a completely different lens, but if the Minister has the right people on board, if she is doing the right things, and if Willow, Jean Prime or Labour will get organised and meet with her, maybe it could be a fantastic outcome.
Andrew, you have an incredible career out of, politics. With all that in mind, I mean, it's fair to say we want that for all of our Pacific people and Pacific students. Do you back this change that's happening?
I was a student of NCEA, and so, it's. I guess the starting point for that for me would be education is really important, and so in any way, shape, or form, if we are focusing on improving our education and the delivery of that for our children, I think it's important, and we should back it.
Yeah, certainly. Hey, look, final...
And just a final point.
Yeah.
It hasn't failed everybody. If I look at one of my nephews, first class honours in architecture, grew up through the NCEA system. His cohort of friends all through NCEA are doing really great things. So it worked for some people. I think one of the broader issues is that this needs to be decoupled from socioeconomic status. People whose kids go to King's or private schools often do better than kids who are in a South Auckland school where there are fewer resources, etc., etc. So it is complicated, but it's a good thing that the government is tackling it.
Well, then, just to pick up on your point there that it didn't fail everyone, was NCEA the problem then, or were we just failing to support Pacific students through it, Richard?
Well, I think it's even more complicated than that. If you come from a well-resourced family, if you went to a school that is not dealing with all sorts of other issues, then NCEA works. So I was the writer in residence at a South Auckland school. I started off with a class of 12, but those kids are working so hard to support their families that they would often not turn up. And I'm never going to tell them off for supporting their family, but we do need to look at the resourcing around schools that are not in, your Remuera or your North Shore or your good suburbs in Christchurch or Dunedin. So it's much more complicated than the system is wrong. And that's what I think the challenge will be for the Minister, who has had the courage to take this on board.
Look, this is what I'm calling my final hot take question. It's a cheeky one for both of you. Just a hot take, so very quickly. Is Mark Brown still the right man for the job? Go, Angee.
Oh, I don't know. I'm in two minds, but yeah, I'm not going to say yes or no.
Okay, Richard?
Look, I was at university with him, adjacent. Look, I don't know. I mean, I don't live in Rarotonga. I go there every couple of years for a holiday. It's up to the people to make that decision. It's not up for a hot take from me or possibly from Angee.
Oh, no, just being cheeky. Hey, thank you both. I thank you both for your time. Really appreciate it. That is Angee Nicholas, of course, former National Party candidate, and AUT Journalism Senior Lecturer Richard Pamatatau. You both have a lovely weekend when you get to it, eh?
Thank you. And hopefully Angee's going to stand again.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks, Richard. Good to hear from you.
Cheers.
Okay. Take care.
Cheers. You're listening